So when I'm frozen, you can still hear me?
Okay.
Sometimes, yes. Yeah. Did you just freeze there?
I did a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
It's weird that it's like
Hey
I am
guys, hold on,
hardwired.
guys. Something's wrong.
We're holding.
for goofing off. If you are in a freelance job or a side hustle, you're going to want to stick around today because we're talking about some stuff that could be pretty important to you. A few years ago, I remember sitting in a classroom after my daughter had gone through a science program, and they were just talking about the rise of gig-based workers. And I don't remember the exact statistic, but essentially, it was well over 50%, like 60 or 70% of future employees would be gig-based and side hustle or gig-based employment. And today we're talking about those boundaries that kind of come up and need to be established, because you're working from your home or it is mixing in different areas. So that's going to be our show today. I hope you'll stick around and hang out with us. But good news, it's not just me. You get to hang out with the amazing CJ Powers, who may or may not know a thing about gig-based work or side hustles.
May or may not. Spent half of his life in gig work, but may or may not.
And the amazing Marty Jalove as well, who may just know the same amount as CJ.
Well, we'll have to see.
So I'm just curious, for our brown bag in it show today, did you guys bring lunch in?
Of course, I did. CJ, what about you? Did you bring lunch?
I did. I've misplaced it.
Oh,
I'll find it. You go first while I look.
My lunch is a sad story. Everyone who knows me knows I'm just a poor boy, right? And so I had made this beautiful, beautiful Subway sandwich, but someone sat on it. And so now if you take a look, it's nothing but a broken hero. So this is just awful. This is just awful.
That nice. We get that. The audience will soon get it.
Well, yeah, I'm willing to give it to anybody who's willing to get it. Yes.
Oh, great humor, man.
We'll come back to that.
Obviously, I can't make any money preparing lunch. So being a chef or a cook or a lunch preparer is not ever going to be my side hustle.
Okay, so the only side hustle I have access to, because I'm wired up and I can't walk over there. I have this tendency lately, I don't know why, but for some reason, instead of carrying my stuff all over here, I leave it over there on the side, and then the show starts and I'm like, oops, it's over there. But you always have to quench your thirst. So whenever I've been involved in gigs, the thing that I noticed more often than not is that sometimes there isn't food and drinks available, and everyone complains for the entire process. But smart people that pull together the gig jobs always will have food service available. Better known as craft services in some circles.
So are we going to get food service on this show now? Is that what you're hinting at, CJ?
I think, yeah. As soon as Christine freezes again, she'll hop in her car, drive it over to your place, and then she'll come back.
Little does the audience know that Christine's not actually freezing. She pauses her film so she can make lunch. Okay, so she can get prepared. She can get all ready for the show. That's what it all is.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, we got a hello already today. Hello there.
Hello.
Hi, Brian. Yeah, so today in my lunch, I brought some microgreens, which, as we all know, is not quite as big as the other greens, but definitely has a much more powerful punch that will keep you going on lunch for a long time. And of course, I have to do my not sponsored. I totally love these. Caffeine water. Everyone should be drinking these because I totally love them.
Caffeine and water. I mean, aren't they opposing forces?
They are not.
Christine, I really like the fact that you brought those microgreens, because I don't know if CJ even caught it. See, CJ, her idea here was to say, even though they're little, they're kind of like your side hustle. They're a little bit, but they have such a big impact on us. And we're hoping that little thing that we do changes our life forever. So I caught that, Christine, very nicely. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
And
but
she
seriously, in these side
And there you go. She's out making lunch again. All right. Nobody works as hard as Christine. Look at this, the effort she puts into this show.
Try it again, Christine.
Speaking of the effort, you know, when I was researching a little bit about what we were talking about in our show today, it was interesting to realize there's a con side to the gig-based or side hustle industry, not only for those of us in it, but for the communities around us. But that will be a future show. I want to focus on when you are running a side hustle or a gig-based business. I mean, there's a need to set up some boundaries. Have you guys ever had where the work overflows or something flows into the work to work through?
Okay, first of all, there's several times where, you know, we're talking about 8-hour days turning into 10-hour or 12-hour or 14-hour or 16-hour days. If you're not a big, huge corporation, people think that you're at their beck and call. And if they want to text you at midnight to ask you a question, they think they have the right to do that. And they don't. I now use that on my phone. You know, you got that little moon button that you can program, so it just blocks all calls and texts during a certain time frame. And believe it or not, I was involved in a gig years ago that taught me that lesson, because I was in Tokyo at the time, and normal times here versus when I was sleeping over there made a big difference in my project.
Yeah, I would go along with something you said there, CJ, is that when you've got this side hustle, these separate businesses you're running, you know, in our minds, we want to say, I want to isolate it to these 4 hours a day in the evening or something like that. But the clients we have, they don't view it that way. They expect us to be available 24 hours a day. So I remember plenty of times the side hustles that I would be doing was interrupting my regular paying gigs, the things that were really putting food on the table. Yeah. And it's very different to weigh the difference. And so I love this whole idea. I want to hear how some people really set those boundaries, because I've always had some difficulty with that.
Well, speaking of boundaries, I'm going to invite another amazing guest, a self-proclaimed professional gigger,
nice.
to join us today. So, speaking of broken heroes, and I don't mean the sandwich, I mean real entertainment, we have Jeremy Lynch joining us today. And Jeremy is a freelance videographer, photographer, as well as a wedding videographer, and this very exciting broken hero is he's a filmmaker and he has this business that he launched in 2018, Broken Hero Entertainment, with a few films, one due in the pre-production stage right now, actually a couple, one post-production, pre-production. We'll let him share more about that. So welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Hey.
Well, hello everybody. CJ, Christine, Marty, thanks for having me on the show.
Welcome.
And Brian.
There you go. There you go.
A little delayed on the applause.
Here you get the cheer track. Wow, this is exciting.
So I'm going to have to start offering food on my website now so I can sell some broken heroes.
There you go. There you go. I'll give you the recipe.
I also want to give a shout out to Brian Fuentes, who sent us a little message earlier in the show. Talk about freelancers. He is a photographer and wedding videographer, and a very good one at that. And he saw the link and that I sent him and was nice enough to check out the show. So thank you, Brian. So yeah, I guess you mentioned that I could share a little bit more about what I do with Broken Hero, and I kind of break down what I do into 3 categories. I do freelance videography, which kind of contains everything: photography, video. For example, I shot a commercial this summer, and very next day I went and shot a live performing arts thing, and then the very next day after that I went and I recorded a girl who just wanted to have something for her aerial acrobatics that she was doing for fitness. So that's what I call my freelance videography. It's a little bit of everything. And then my second thing I do is I do wedding videography. I'm very focused. Me and my buddy are getting ready to launch our company, which will be available for weddings in 2022. We're very excited. It's just something that it's always an adventure, and some of my stories today are going to center around some of the weddings that I've worked. And then third, and probably closest to my heart, is the filmography that I do. I consider myself to be a filmmaker. As Christine brought up, I have a couple of films that are in various states of production. There's also one that anyone can go see online. On if you're a member of Prime and you have Prime Video, you can check out The Scavenger, which is an 8-minute short film. It takes place in the post-apocalyptic deserts of the future, where people are fighting over water to survive. So it's a little bit about my background and what I do.
I think I saw too that the post-apocalyptic deserts are actually the Indiana Dunes.
They are. They are. And what's even more funny is we shot half of it in November, and we came back and shot the other half in April the next year. So it was neither a desert or hot when we were shooting. So we had some very, very dedicated actors who went around in these hot desert clothes when it was very cold and chilly outside, and they managed to pull it off. You can't tell. You'd think they're burning up and dying of heat exhaustion.
Well, I'm starting to understand the title of your company, Broken Hero, better.
Well, and I know Jeremy was a hero in that film because it turned out he had some missing footage. So he dressed up like the main actor, went back out to one of the dunes, filmed a bunch of stuff where he had blood packets or whatever on him to make it look like he was injured, and quite the combination of not only shots from totally different time frames, but also different actors, and make it look like the same actor. I mean, that takes tremendous skill.
Yeah, well, I was close enough in body type to the main actor of the film where I figured I could stunt double for him. So there are a couple of shots, and he had a limited schedule. He was in the middle of working on a feature at the time, so there was only so much time we could have with him. So if you go and you watch the film, you'll notice, you actually probably won't notice, but you can almost assume that any shot that has the main actor in it that doesn't show his face is probably me.
Especially if they're rolling down the dune.
Rolling down the hill, that could be me. You don't know.
So with all these gigs, with all these jobs, I mean, you have boundaries in a lot of different directions, not just one job against the other job, but, into your personal life. How do you know your priorities? In your gig-based work?
So that is a great question, Christine. I'm glad you brought that up. It actually took me a while to figure out my priorities. When I was a young whippersnapper and jumping into, oh, hey, Siobhan, thanks for watching the show. But I'm going to get back to my thought here, but I just want to point out Siobhan's husband, Michael, is a good friend of mine, and he has a feature film on Prime Video. You can check it out. It's called Friends, Family, and Lovers. So when you're done watching this show, of course, go check that out on Amazon Prime. But back to my original thought, it actually took me a while to figure out my priorities as a gigger. At first, my priority was do whatever it takes to make the client happy. And then my priority became to make the most creative, mind-blowing, visually stunning thing that I possibly could. Both of those priorities take a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and a lot of sacrifice. So over time, I learned that I need to make myself a priority because I wasn't providing myself time to rest. I wasn't providing myself time to have a personal life. And I also wasn't making sure that I was setting the boundary of making sure the gig is paying me enough to be worth my time. So for many, many years, I was actually really struggling to take care of myself because my priority was only to take care of the client and only to make the most extravagant piece of artwork that I was capable of doing. And over time, I had to learn that those are great priorities, but you have to balance that with the priority of taking care of yourself as well. Um, and so over time, I did start to set boundaries. And at first, I was afraid to. I was actually afraid to tell a client that I'm sorry, I can't do that because I have to. And it surprised me how many people, when you explain those boundaries, are willing to respect them. But you yourself have to set them and communicate them.
Okay, so I've been in a position where I've had to communicate to some clients that just will not hear the fact that they need to be kind during certain time frames by not calling. And I think part of it is the technology today. You know, we all have one of these nifty little things. And what happens is that I feel like, okay, I can text you anytime I want. You don't have to respond. Your boundary can be you not responding until a certain time. But then again, at the same time, you can always call too and assume that if I need my privacy, it will jump to voicemail. And, you know, that gets a little sketchy, the whole thing as far as what part am I responsible for in creating these boundaries. And I think one of the things we need to talk about is the fact that there are boundaries to help guide those around us. And then there's boundaries for us to secure what's important in our own lives.
It's an excellent point, CJ. I can relate to that too. I think it's a common thing when you are a freelancer that your clients are going to want to contact you at all times. Now, to be fair, you know, if you're doing a driving service like Uber or Amazon Flex, you might not run into that as much. If you're doing, you know, some freelance work on Fiverr or Winolo, that might, you know, become an issue. Or if you have your own business doing videography, photography, or, you know, catering or what have you, the list goes on, you might find yourself in that position where you're being contacted all the time, whether you want to be or not. So CJ, what are some strategies that you use to help field those calls during times that you need to be left alone?
You know, that's a good question, but we're doing the interviewing, buddy.
Some boundaries, CJ.
I'm kidding.
Contain them.
Actually,
You'll be the one asking the questions.
So, yeah, I can certainly answer that question. I think one of the things that we have to kind of look at from a perspective of kind of wholeness and healthiness in business is the fact that each aspect of our business, especially in a gig industry, where we might be a jack of all trades and there's certain areas that we focus on at different times. I'm reading a book right now. I can't remember the specific name, so I'm going to just sidestep that for a moment. But it uses a stoplight to help us know when are we most efficient. And your green light time period for me might be like from 7 a.m. till noon. And my yellow light time might be from 6 a.m. to 7, and then from noon until about 3 o'clock. And then everything else is my red light zone. And what that basically means is that during my green light zone, I can get 3 times more done than in my yellow zone. And in my red zone, I hardly get anything done that's of any value. So creating a boundary to protect those time slots, and also you have to protect your clients so that they know that they can count on you, but they have to understand when they can count on you. Because I think it's fair, don't you, to suggest that there's certain time frames that you are available. Now granted, we both know that sometimes you're going to have a 16-hour day. If it's a tight deadline, you know the client's going to be calling you at 10 o'clock at night. That's okay if you're ready for that and you all talked about it. But if not,
kind of goes back to priorities.
yeah, if not, 9 to 5 is sufficient, right?
And there's a technique out there called the Pomodoro Technique that is, you can Google it. But it's essentially kind of this idea too of using times to not just set boundaries, but to maximize those times when you're most effective and get most stuff done. So 25.
There you go. I do like the Pomodoro method. Yes, Christine. The idea of work 25 minutes and then promise yourself 5 minutes to do the fun thing, right? I've used it and it's helped me become incredibly more effective. Yes. So great for bringing that up.
Well, why don't you? Marty has a friend. He has a director friend, John, right?
Do I?
Yes. Let's go.
There's this young director named Johnny, and he's having dinner with 2 producers, and he's really trying to impress them. He's young in the industry, and he's got to make a name for himself. He's running out of some things to say, and out of the corner of his eye, he notices that Robert De Niro is in the same restaurant. So he excuses himself, walks over to Robert De Niro, and he says, "Excuse me, Mr. De Niro, I am like your biggest fan, and I've just incredible respect for you. Is there any chance at all that you could do a small favor for me? You see, I'm an up-and-coming director, and I'm over at this other table with 2 producers, and I'm just trying to, build a name for myself. And if you could walk over, please, if you could just walk over and say, 'Hey, Johnny, how's it going?' And it would make me look like such a big shot. It would just do wonders for my career. Could you please do that for me, sir? Could you please? I have so much respect for you." And Robert De Niro goes, "Yeah, sure, I could help out a young guy like you. Sure, I could do something like that." So Johnny goes back to the table and they go on with the conversation. Moments later, Robert De Niro walks over and goes, "Hey, Johnny, how's it going?" And without looking up, Johnny just does this whole, "Bobby, I'm in a meeting here. Stop bothering me."
All right. So I think that talks a lot about respect, okay? Having respect for the people you work with, the people you count on. All right. So now it's my turn to ask some questions. So Jeremy, when do you think you are going to draw the line, or if you're ever going to draw the line? In other words, you've got multiple side hustles that you're running. Do you picture yourself just constantly doing side hustles, or is there a goal in your mind to say, this one's going to be the one that I'm building, and when I get to a certain point, I'm going to do that one and put all my time and energy into one?
Well, that's a great question, because I'm kind of in the middle of doing that right now. So I guess a good example would be it's kind of the end of the shooting season for me and the beginning of the post-production season for me. So kind of the boundaries I've had to set for myself, yes, to myself, we talked about setting boundaries for clients, but now I'm setting boundaries for myself, is saying, hey, I have X number of projects to edit right now. This one's going to take me at least 2 weeks. This one's going to take me at least a month. And these other 5 are probably just going to take me a couple of days each. So right now I'm focusing on the little ones, but I'm telling myself, once I get to a certain point, I need to dedicate all my time to this project. And then once I get that done, I need to dedicate all my time to that project. And that kind of gives me a timeline, so when I'm communicating with the client, I can allow them, to understand when they can expect these projects to be turned in.
Okay. Go ahead, Kristen.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
it sounds.
All right.
Oh.
I'm just.
There you go. No, you're doing great, Christine.
I made
You got to
it.
stop taking lunch and get back into the interviews.
Let me say this really quick. So there's got to be gray areas that come up. You're talking about shooting and post-production, but with all that you described, you've got to have gray areas that you're working in. How do you handle those? I mean, how do you find definitions for your gray areas to put boundaries in place?
Dad, that's a great question. It really comes down to taking a step back and looking at your priorities. Me personally, I'm I tend to be wired to be a people pleaser. So when people keep coming to me and asking for things, especially if they fall into those gray areas, I, have I have a habit of saying yes and then stepping away and going, why did I just do that? So in those gray areas, I have to step back and say, what's my priority here? Is my priority, doing everything this person is asking for, or is my priority doing a quality job, being able to turn in quality work, and being able to take care of myself at the same time? So having a list of things that are a priority to me might be beneficial in those situations. So that way, if a person asks me a question, I can quickly think through that list, and see if it lines up with my priorities, or if it's something that's going to get in the way of my priorities. So that's an excellent question.
So Jeremy, on that same regard, uh, we have to set these priorities. I understand that, and when you're doing so many different things, and trust me, I feel my entire life is nothing more than a side hustle. So I look at this, and I'm being pulled in 100 different directions. For you, when you put some extra effort, or you decide I'm going to do this today and not this, I'm going to put this other thing on the back burner. Do you find that you put the effort towards the things you're best at, the things that you're the most talented at, the things that bring you the most profit, or the things that bring you the most joy, like bring you some excitement or happiness? Like, how do you, because we can set priorities, but what's your priority?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Is it the job that's going to make you the most money? Is it the job that's going to make you the most happy? Or is it the job that's going to make you the most productive? And I tend to take it on a case-by-case basis. In a situation like right now, like I just described, where it's like, okay, I have all these little jobs that I can knock out really quick before I start focusing on the bigger jobs. I might decide to do it based on,
Wow.
there, I have a set malfunction, everybody.
You need to call in a stunt man.
Right? Okay, yeah. Where was the production designer on that one?
Kidding. So we know
We
one of
almost had a broken
one of
hero.
your weakness points right now. So let's go back to your strengths. All right.
Yeah, I think for me, my natural tendency is to go to the job that I feel like is going to bring me the most fulfillment. I'm a
Excellent.
creative person. I tend to really get excited about those creative jobs when I have a vision in my head, and it just sparks me and really motivates me to pursue that. So sometimes I have to take a step back and go, well, hey, maybe I'm obsessing a little bit over this job, but I might need to prioritize this one that's paying more. Or I might have to prioritize this one that has a deadline tomorrow. So I think to answer your question, because is it this? Is it that? Is it this? I think to answer your question, yes. It's one of those things at a different time based on the situation.
No, but I like how you did that, Jeremy, because you came down to it. I agree with you. You've got to weigh the difference. Everything's a different importance level. But I loved your answer that if all things are equal, you're going to go after the thing that brings you the most joy. That's beautiful. That's a message that I really hope our audience hears.
Well, yeah, you have to. I mean, if you're doing freelance work instead of having a 9 to 5, or you're doing freelance work on top of having 9 to 5, my guess is you're doing it because it's something that you love and you're passionate about. And if if you can't prioritize the thing that makes you passionate about that job once in a while, why do it?
There you go. Beautiful, beautiful words. Yeah.
So if I can take a step back to your original question, because I think somewhere in here we talked about times when we had to set boundaries. I have a great story about when I had to set a boundary with my mom while I was on a gig. One of the first weddings I ever shot was for a friend of the family. And so obviously my parents were there. It was actually my dad's best friend. My dad was my dad's best friend was getting married late in life, and my dad was one of the best men, and my parents were there. And I had contracted with the client to do X number of hours, start at X time, end at Y time, and call it a day. Uh, and I remember, we reached the end of our agreement, and I was packing up my equipment and getting ready to sit down and eat and enjoy being at the reception as a guest. And my mom and a friend walked up to me and said, "What are you doing? Why aren't you recording this part?" And I said, "Well, it's just the reception. I already got most of the important parts of the reception, and my contract is up. It's time for me to eat and enjoy the rest of the party as a guest." And some more compelling arguments were given that I should, in fact, not stop working and continue working. And I really had to draw a line in the sand and put my foot down that no, I did everything I was asked to do by the client. And I pointed out that, this part of the day seems to be more important to you than it does to my client. If you'd like, you can record it with your phones. Unfortunately, they weren't too happy with me after that, but that was it's my mom, and we kissed and we made up afterwards, and everything's good now. And just an example of a time where I had to,
Sure.
enforce a boundary.
Sounds
And
like
I
we had the
think
same mother.
valuable to understand that you had your way that you wanted to run your business, and
Hmm.
she had a great way to run another type of business.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think Christine was going to lead us into the topic summary, but Jeremy, one last quick thing: how would you tell somebody, a young kid who wants to get into the film industry, what should they be doing?
That's a great question. So the question I think people ask me the most is, should I go to film school? And I always take it on a case by case basis. For there's a good buddy of mine who I've worked on a lot of projects with, and he actually recently started going to film school about a year ago, kind of more into his adult years, and he decided he wanted to go to film school after we'd shot a number of projects together. And for him, he needed that structure. He needed deadlines. He needed assignments. He needed a classroom for him to really absorb how to do the filmmaking process. For me, I just needed a camera. I'm like, I will create my own projects. I will assign my own thing, and I will find some mentors to tell me whether or not I'm doing a good job and what I should work on. That's, to me, I will always find something to do, and I will keep doing it. Just two very different personalities. And I think to any young person looking to be a filmmaker, I'd say look at yourself, examine yourself. Are you someone who can motivate yourself, or are you
Mhm.
someone who's going to need to put yourself in a situation that's going to motivate you? And if you can answer that question, you're 50% of the way there.
There you go.
I think the second thing I would say, we live in the day of YouTube University. There are all these online classes that you can pay for. The amount of resources for you to learn is there's easily 10 times as much at your fingertips as there was when I started.
Sure.
Um, and so you can learn everything you need to know to be successful at production very easily. I would say the second half of that is find a way to learn business. If you're somebody who can motivate
Yeah.
yourself to learn production on your own, and you have an opportunity to go to school for business, learn production on the side. I would definitely recommend that. If you're
Speaking about business combining with production, tinfoil hat seems to be your next up and coming. And aren't you involved in the business side a little bit with fundraising at this point?
Yes, we are. So we have a definite goal that we're trying to reach in order to produce Tinfoil Hat. So Tinfoil Hat, in order to tell the story we want to tell, which is a very emotional human story about two brothers trying to survive an alien abduction, we need to do a certain amount of special effects, and we need to do a certain amount of stunts, and we need to do it all safely, which requires us to hire professionals to make sure those stunts are being done safely. Unfortunately, we've heard some stories recently about people who have gotten injured or even died doing stunts on set recently, and it's very tragic, and my heart goes out to the families of those people, and I want to make sure things like that don't happen on a set where I'm involved. And in order to hire professionals and do things safely, we have to have a certain amount of liquidity to pay those people. So, yeah. So if you go to the website brokenheroentertainment.com, there will be a tab where you can find out more about Tinfoil Hat and how you can contribute to this project. You can even find out a little bit about the story and watch some videos about us talking about it. And you can always reach out to me and find out more about it. We do a number of creative projects, but this is one that me and my team are very, very passionate about, and we would love to get over the financial hurdle and be able to shoot this, film this, and get it done, and show this project to the world.
There you go.
Awesome. Jeremy, you've been so great hanging out with us today, sharing about your lessons learned in being a professional gigger, as you said. I think we learned about setting priorities and making yourself a priority in that, using time and technology to help establish those boundaries, and making sure that you're setting boundaries even for yourself and the things that you're wanting to do as yourself. Really, thanks very much for hanging out with us today, Jeremy.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I've got lots of notes. So. and I've already bookmarked the Scavenger and Friends, Family, and Lovers on Prime. So right after this, that's what I'm watching.
Thanks. I was going to point that out too. Friends, Family, and Lovers, and the Scavenger are to-dos.
Yes.
So the Scavenger, I produced and directed. Friends, Family, and Lovers, I actually did help out on as miscellaneous crew. So it was written and directed by a very good friend of mine, and I worked on set oftentimes as a gaffer, a grip, or a sound technician. I even assistant directed for one of the production days. So that's a project that I did not write or direct, but I'm still very, very passionate about, and I had a lot of fun watching the finished product, and I think you might enjoy it as well.
The real question I have for you, though, is have you ever been a best boy? I love film terms. We gotta say it.
That's a great question. No, I have not been a best boy yet, and I also have not been a best man. Those are two very different things. But I've worked as a grip and I've worked as a gaffer, but I have not tackled best boy yet.
There you go. Well, thanks, Jeremy. We really appreciate you being on.
Thanks. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
What a great visit, huh?
Yes,
very important topic about setting something you don't think about, starting in a side hustle or anything that you're doing, and I think this is, good. Jeremy really gave some great insights on the things that he's had to tackle over time, and I think it's super important. Have you guys run into these sort of things with creating boundaries and stuff for yourself? Same lessons or anything to add?
Completely. I remember when I was a new father and my daughter was young, and so I was working full-time, coming home, helping take care of my little girl, and then I was running an entire web design business at night. And I just found myself up till 4 a.m. designing websites, working on all of that, just to get up a couple hours later to go to my regular full-time job. And I just remember not knowing at that point how to set those boundaries because it was slowly killing me. You know, between regular work, my side hustle, being a father, it was just a lot. And I love Jeremy's point that probably the most important thing of anyone who gets involved in side hustles is to learn how to run a business. Because if you don't know how to run it as a business, they're not side hustles, they're hobbies. Okay?
That's a good point. You know, for me, it was almost a physicality issue that I had to deal with at first, because I started out my business in my dining room, which happened to be a walkway path for everyone in the family to keep on going back and forth, and it was driving me nutty. So what I had to do was I had to build a actual office space in the basement. Now I had an external door that went directly outside, so it was a nicer type basement. And once I did that, I could actually go to work and then come home and play. And the kids really appreciated the difference when I could connect with them like that.
Sure. What about you, Christine?
For me, it was kind of what you described is when I first started doing consulting work, I found those spare hours, which were supposed to be sleeping hours, and use those as working hours. And that it really kind of backfired on me. So figuring that out and learning how to create time slots that I was working were super important. Fortunately for me, people grew up, so that helped free up time.
This whole show makes me wish I had like a bag of popcorn, so I'm just going to keep eating this Broken Hero. So, you guys continue.
It's actually a new chip brand. If you go down
That's
the
true.
chip aisle, you'll see the Broken Hero.
There you go. I love it.
Grab a bag of Broken Heroes and visit Jeremy's Broken Hero website and learn a little bit more about those films.
There you go. There you go.
You know, one thing that I wanted to mention real briefly is next week's show. I just wanted to point out the fact that we're going to talk about confirmation bias and other kinds of biases that impact you at work. So I think you might want to swing back around and watch us next week as well.
All right. Take those last bites of lunch. Thanks for hanging out with us on Brown Bagging It.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.